I'm Don Villar, Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. I'm also a member of the NABE CWA Local 54041 in Chicago, Illinois.
And you said about the history, early history of Chicago, they actually had a radio station. Why don't you talk about that, the importance of that?
All right. You know, as the Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor, I'm the number 2 labor officer in the city of Chicago at the CFL, a number 2 elected officer. But the Chicago Federation of Labor, we had one of the first radio stations in the city of Chicago called WCFL, and it was a power station, and the signal could be heard all over the Midwest and was known as the voice of labor. And it was started in the 1930s as workers' power started to build, and all over the country, all over the Midwest, they would hear the voice of radio, a voice of labor on WCFL. And think about the fact that, okay, that's the 1930s, the rise of unions, the rise of labor. Maybe in the early part of the 1930s or 1920s, we were maybe 8%, 7% union density. And then because of that, because of the power of communications, we were able to get the passage of the National Labor Relations Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, Social Security Act, and it all came out because of communications, and actually because of Illinois, and because this is Chicago. That was one of the programming that we pushed out there. And what happened after the passage of the National Labor Relations Act? We went from 7-8% union density to 35% union density. And empowering that union density was the voice of labor. When in all these states around the Midwest, they became strong union labor states, all because of communications. And back in the day.
And today there is no national labor channel.
No.
That station was sold off,
exactly.
and there are labor programs. There are 200. There's the Labor Radio Network, and there are labor shows. But it seems like politically there needs to be a national labor channel or an international labor. What's going on nationally? I mean, all the struggles going on around the country, people don't know about them. Even in the CWA, there's an issue of communication.
Oh, I mean, I think, look, unfortunately, I spent 25 years in television news in Chicago as a writer-producer and member of the NABE CWA. So covering news in the mainstream media, that's my background. But you're right. I mean, today, there are more labor voices, more labor stories. And actually, Steve, you remember the News Guild? Remember that report that came out maybe 25 years ago? What's the percentage of news coverage in local news or news in general that covers labor? It was like just a pittance, maybe minuscule, maybe like 1% of your daily news or local news or news coverage covered labor issues or worker issues. But you know what? 25 years later, I'm seeing, especially in our Chicago market, more and more news coverage on worker issues, labor issues, and I think that's especially in the Chicago market, and that's because of the strength of labor. And I'm sure that's the same case in where you're from in San Francisco.
Well, there's struggles galore all over. They're privatizing UC, they're attacking the workers.
But I think we hear labor stories, positive stories about labor unions in our markets. We're seeing more positive stories about labor unions, and it shows the fact that we have the high. 65% approval rating for unions. That's the highest.
Young people are joining unions. Yeah. They don't see a future just in this country without a union.
Oh, absolutely. They need solidarity. They need that power. And besides being the Secretary-Treasurer of the CFL and also a veteran news journalist, I'm also a civil rights lawyer. And understanding, look, the only way as a lawyer practicing civil rights and employment discrimination, the real power is when you have a union. You could go to court and fight for all these rights, but guess what? Right now, what's going on with the packing of the courts,
fascist dictatorship,
and the overturning of a lot of laws that protect workers. Guess what? You're not going to have the power anymore. Taking your case to the courts. The power is in solidarity and building worker power and forcing employers to do the right thing.
And there's an attack on NABE and PR. What is that all about, and how is that going to affect the American people?
Again, it's just silencing the voice, silencing criticism, and NPR. National Public Radio. And that's such important for a lot of communities where, driving. I think in our big cities, NPR is great. But you go across we were in Pittsburgh, if you drive across Ohio and you listen to the radio bandwidth on your car, there's only one NPR station that you could hear, but the rest is like
right wing
wingnut talk radio, crazy talk, and it's conspiracy theorists. But the most responsible journalism or radio voices that you hear when you're driving, if I was to drive from Pittsburgh to Chicago, driving across most of the voices, most of the radio, most of the news and information that people are getting are wingnuts. Just crazy, rabid propagandists, yes. And now the only reasonable coverage in these areas is NPR. We have they're really fair and unbiased reporting, but they're going to silence that so that folks across the country, the only news they'll get is from wingnut biased propaganda.
Well, what about labor, CWA having a channel, a national channel? I mean, CNN, a labor channel that would have stories like what's going on here all over the country. So many struggles are going on. Even the Pittsburgh News Post-Gazette workers on strike over 1,000 days. People don't even know about it. They haven't heard the strikes going on.
I think what you do, what everybody else is doing, trying to spread the word out there, that's all we do right now. I mean, right now, the thing about getting a license with this Trump FCC, good luck with that. You think we'd get a license? I don't think so.
Give Musk a license.
Yeah, they give Musk a license, but they won't give there's so many hurdles. But so far, think about right now with digital communications and the way people communicate, the channel that you're providing, that's great. That's how we, everything, but every little bit of information helps, right?
And you're a member of Apollo. What's going on with Asian Americans? Because one of the things attacking China, anti-Chinese, fears of Asian Americans, Japanese Americans, what happened with their incarceration. It seems like the danger is growing of really repressive reactionary policies.
There's so much racist vitriol out there. I was actually, was it Thursday? Last week, I was at a press conference speaking out in defense of a grandmother, Filipino grandmother, who was in detention in Kentucky, in Indiana. She's married to a U.S. citizen. She has U.S. citizen children. She's lived here practically all her life. She's 71 years old. She's a caregiver, and she's in a detention center. And I'm at this press conference, and just there was a heckler who was just spewing a lot of racist vitriol. I'm like, what the heck's wrong with these people? And it's funny, it's later that day, I was meeting with, the members of the Texas House who are hiding out in Illinois to defend democracy, and talking with Gene Wu. Here's the leader of this caucus is an Asian American, and just the hate and the racism that he is. Just because, go back to China. Well, he wasn't born in China; he was born in Texas. And just the racist vitriol, just to attack this man for standing up. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing. Absolutely, all of that. Okay, because you're Asian and you're speaking up. Guess what? I could attack you. And just go back to where you're from. Or
but millions of immigrants are from all over the world.
They're all over the world. They're from all over the world.
Texas is a country, is a state of immigrants. A large number of
that's amazing. Texas is a majority minority state. But the voice of these people have been marginalized, have been decimated by the people in power. And
that's the whole redistricting. Get rid of any black, brown, Asian race.
Right, and just people in power, people in poverty. That is one of the things that was such an eye opener. The fact that, whoa, and actually you go down to Texas, how can workers' rights be so abused? How they don't have workers' comp in Texas. If you get hurt or killed or injured in the job, you're SOL. You have to go to court to fight that, to try to get your rights. But guess what? They own the courts. So they already shut the door on workers in Texas. And
that's the open state, right to work job. No health care for workers who are injured.
No worker protection. And think of when you're it's hot in Texas, right? So just even trying to put minimal protections for workers working in the heat, and forget about it. You're never going to see that in Texas. But the people in power, the Republicans in power, have done such a few decades of like just gerrymandering, weakening the voices of working people and people of color, and people. It's maybe we're getting to that point. I mean, and I'm so proud of what they're doing. These Democrats, especially Gene, Representative Wu, House Representative Wu, Leader Wu, for taking a stand.
Well, your governor, Pritzker, actually called for an insurrection at one point, calling for people to go out in the streets, because he's fearful we're going to have fascism in this country and what happened to his family in Germany. I mean, is there a concern? I mean, it seems like that's the direction we're going.
I mean, it is scary times right now, but you know what? I think the labor movement, we're leading the way. Think of it, here in Chicago, we've been, the Chicago Federation of Labor, we've been very active, we've been very progressive. We've been, we were, when Tom Homan came to Chicago at a GOP Christmas party, where you're supposed to, hey, it's Christmas time. And he said, we're going to start the roundups and the raids on immigrants in Chicago.
That was his Christmas greeting.
That was his Christmas greeting to the people of Chicago. And what we did in Chicago, we organized, we mobilized, we made sure people knew their rights. And working with the AFL-CIO and this educating workers, educating communities on know your rights, working with our partners in the community. And it was so effective that Tom Homan was in March or 2 months later. He says, "Well, we couldn't round up as many people in Chicago that we wanted because they knew their rights." So that's just it. It's like we have to be there. And when the attacks on federal workers started in January and February, we started doing Civil Servants Speak Out in Chicago just to educate the public, educate the media. And actually, we get really strong news coverage every time we had these town hall meetings from civil servants. Like, here's what you're going to lose. You're going to lose this. You're going to lose that. And then folks are like, whoa. But and they continue to lose that. And we have to just keep fighting. We have to tell our family and friends and let them know that, hey, we can't let this go. We have to fight for these rights and these hard-won victories. And the funny thing is, like, when we speak out, people listen. So actually, a good example was in March, we had a rally to save the post office, Elon Musk and Doge. So it was on the northwest side of the city. So I got there a little early, but now a few hours early, to avoid traffic. So I decided to pop into a tavern across the street from the post office. And I'm there, watching March Madness, because there's like 3 construction workers, 2 a school teacher, and some other folks at the bar. So it's on a corner. So we're there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just watching the games, and then having my beverage, and all of a sudden, it's just a quiet bar. People are watching the game, and the police pull up because they know a rally's about to start, and we whistled up the police. So then, cop cars pull up around the bar, and the people at the bar is like, "Oh no, what's going on? There's coppers everywhere. Is there a raid? Is there police action?" And then the bartender walks out and asks the cops, "What's happened?" The cops didn't tell her anything, so she goes back. "I don't know what's going on." And then the news crews arrived. Then the hubbub at the bar, "What's going on? What's going on?" And everybody's like, "Maybe there's something big. News are here. Maybe there's a raid at the post office." So then, I put my drink down. I said to the people at the bar, they're here because Elon Musk wants to take away your post office. They want to dismantle the post office. And when I said that, it's like the hubbub at the bar was all about, he can't do that. He can't. That's ridiculous. My mother depends on the post office for a prescription. And I love our postal workers who come around the neighborhood. They're like our neighbors, our friends. And then, so then after a while, the folks who are organizing the rally, they asked me to come out and say it's time to do the rally. And then they come out and get me, and I go out. And we do the rally. We're getting heated up. We're firing up with speeches, and I'm giving my closing my stump speeches, and then I look across the street. Everybody at the bar was now outside, at the corner, cheering us on. So, we turned from bystanders to upstanders, and that's especially when we talk to people about what is really at stake. They're going to get up, and they're going to stand up, and they're going to fight for it. That was maybe that's a social experiment, But and then it was like
people want to protect what they have.
yeah, it's like hold my beer. I'm going to save the post office. That's what they told the bartender. Hold my beer. I'm going to save the post office. So I think as we do that, as we keep what you're doing, spreading the message, telling people what's at stake, people are starting to wake up. I mean, we need.
You're optimistic.
I'm optimistic, but I know it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard because it's going to be tough. But
Working people have the power.
Yeah, I mean, we have a history of struggle, right? The labor movement, especially in Chicago, we like to call ourselves the hometown of the American labor movement because that's where a lot of labor history is made. I mean, think about like 1877, the Great Railway Strike in the city of Chicago, where we had people die for and the army was brought in to crush a strike in 1877, and people died in. There's a bridge across the Chicago River that's called the Red Bridge, not because it's painted red patina, but because workers fleeing from the gunshot and from the beatings, they died on this bridge over the Chicago River. They call it the Red Bridge. And
there was the St. Louis Commune. The workers took over the city during that strike.
Exactly. I mean, 1886 at the Haymarket, right? Where all over the world they celebrate the Haymarket. What happened in Chicago, when workers, fighting for their rights were innocent, the innocent were hung.
Mostly immigrant workers.
Immigrant workers, right? It was they were German, Irish immigrants. They wanted rights, and so and they were fighting for an 8-hour day.
Which we don't even have today with gig work, people working 2 or 3 jobs.
Weekend, they're fighting for a weekend, 8 hours a day, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours to do as we please, right?
AI should provide that. It should shorten the work week. Yeah. Instead, it's like stringing people out.
Right, absolutely. So then in 1894, at the Pullman strike, another Pullman strike, and then 1837, the Little Steel strike, this Memorial Day massacre.
My grandfather walked the picket line on that with my father.
At the Republic Steel. So, and actually there's a lot of people alive today in Chicago who were there still. I mean, they were young. I mean, and so Chicago's been known as this place where workers stand up and we fight and we die. But, in anything, and that's a struggle that's gone on for 100,
that's our history.
That's our history. That's the history of workers. And maybe, not to say that that's going to happen, but we're going to see that. We're actually starting to see that, right? People are going to start dying. And, was it last week, there was an immigrant at a detention center who was found who hung himself. I mean, he hung himself, who knows? Maybe, I'm not sure what the investigation said, but people are going to start dying. And people are already. I mean, at the Alligator Alcatraz, where ambulances are already going there.
They went to Alcatraz prison. They want to make it a prison again in San Francisco.
Yeah.
We just had a rally there on the anniversary of Medicare. Money for healthcare, not for prisons.
Right. Oh, and that's the other. He's going to spend $150 billion. He gave $150 billion to ICE, right? Think of what that money could have done for our schools, for social services, and for all these things that are more critical, for people, to make people's lives, to improve people's lives. But so it's just, Steve, it's a constant struggle. It's never going to end, and labor's been part of that struggle forever. And we just have to be ready for the moment, and we have to keep speaking up, standing up, and be upstanders, not bystanders. So.
Okay, thanks for joining us.
You guys, Steve.